Chapter 199. In front of the palace. Su Qin raised his right hand. The divine sense of the current goddess of the snow god palace floated above his palm. If Su Qin did not have a domain, Bing Ling might have escaped. Unfortunately, within the domain, Su Qin was the master of all things. He could overturn space and move the world with a single thought. No matter how fast Bing Ling was, unless he could break through space and break through the domain, it was meaningless. That aura. Su Qin looked at Bing Ling's divine sense. To be precise, he was looking at the aura that enveloped Bing Ling's divine sense. Bing Ling had relied on this aura to separate his divine sense from his physical body and reach a terrifying speed in an instant. Unfortunately, it's only effective against divine sense. Su Qin glanced at it and lost interest. If this aura could be carried with the physical body, Su Qin would be interested. However, if it was only divine sense, Su Qin did not even bother to look at it. Then, Su Qin turned Bing Ling's divine sense into dust. He looked up at the last Taoist priest in a Taoist robe. At this moment, he was the only one left among the people from the overseas great sects. Other than Su Qin, he was the only one standing there. This is too terrifying. When he saw Su Qin looking at him, the Taoist priest in a Taoist robe trembled. He felt as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. It was extremely difficult for him to even move. Su Qin had reduced these arrogant disciples to ashes with a wave of his hand. This was especially true for the current goddess of the snow god palace. She had obviously used some method to escape and had even abandoned her physical body. However, she still fell into Su Qin's hands. This was an unprecedented blow to the Taoist priest. "Do you know why I didn't kill you?" Su Qin's tone was flat. However, to the Taoist priest, it was like a clap of thunder. "My lord, if you want to know anything, please ask away," the Taoist priest replied respectfully. "You're smart." A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. "Come with me." Su Qin spared the Daoist priest's life for this reason, but more importantly, the Daoist priest was the only one who did not have any killing intent in his heart. Even when he fought with Ruanqing, he did not go overboard and did not seriously injure Ruanqing. Very soon, after Su Qin spoke a few words with the Emperor of Tang, he brought Ruanqing, the Taoist priest, and the others back to the Eastern Palace. The Emperor of Tang calmed himself down and began to mobilize the army to stabilize the chaotic situation caused by the arrival of the 6 mythical creatures. In the Eastern Palace, Su Qin glanced at the terrified Daoist and said casually, "Tell me everything you know." The Daoist priest bowed and said, "My name is Yen Hai. I come from the Dao Yi sect overseas." "Dao One school?" Ruanqing's expression changed slightly. "You know of the Dao One sect?" Su Qin glanced at Ruanqing and spoke indifferently. "Master, the Dao One sect is famous in the overseas martial arts world. How could I not know?" Ruanqing said respectfully, "Even among the many powerful sects overseas, the Dao One sect is enough to be ranked in the top 5. The Daoist master of each generation of the Dao One sect has monstrous strength, suppressing many overseas mythical creatures. I heard that 3,000 years ago, the Dao One sect had an earth immortal." Ruanqing quickly told him everything she knew about the Dao One sect. "Earth immortal? It seems that this Dao One sect is quite strong." Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look on his face. At Su Qin's level, he naturally knew how difficult it was to step into the Earth immortal level. When Ruanqing heard Su Qin's evaluation of the Dao One sect, his scalp went numb. The Dao One sect was a great sect overseas, with tens of thousands of years of history, and who knows how many powerhouses had come out. But in Su Qin's words, it was only quite strong. Moreover, Ruanqing faintly sensed that even if the evaluation was quite strong, Su Qin did not say it to the Dao One sect, but to the Earth immortal of the Dao One sect from 3,000 years ago. As for the Dao One sect, Ruanqing did not know if it was an illusion, but he faintly sensed that Su Qin did not put this great sect in his eyes at all. The Taoist priest Yen Hai smiled bitterly. He did not think as much as Ruanqing. At this moment, Yen Hai was very clear that his life and death was only in Su Qin's hands. No matter how strong the Dao One sect was, it was useless. Continue. Su Qin just sighed and didn't say anything more. For Su Qin, becoming an earth immortal was just a matter of time. It was nothing at all. The current goddess of the Snow God Palace, the Kuragenkyo's disciple Xianming and others, and I came to this continent under the orders of our sect to determine the location of the great battle in the recovery of vitality. Yan Hai honestly revealed their origins, their purpose, and everything else. He did not dare to leave anything out. This was because Yan Hai knew that in front of a powerhouse like Su Qin, who was at least close to the level of a sect master, any little trick was equivalent to courting death. Su Qin's expression did not change, but Wan Qing's expression changed as he listened. Especially when he heard that the woman in white was the current goddess of the Snow God Palace, his face turned even paler. Master, something big has happened. Wan Qing's scalp exploded as he said in a trembling voice. He originally thought that the people who came here this time were all ordinary disciples of the great sects overseas, or at most, core disciples. However, Wan Qing did not expect that the people who came with Yan Hai were actually these geniuses. Wan Qing knew in his heart what these people represented. If they were ordinary disciples, Su Qin could kill them. Even if the great sects were dissatisfied, they would not clash with a powerhouse like Su Qin for ordinary disciples. But now, these people were ordinary disciples? Especially Bing Ling. As the current goddess of the Snow God Palace, she was regarded as the future Snow God Palace Lord. Even she was dead. At the very least, the relationship between the Snow God Palace and Su Qin would definitely be irreconcilable. There was no room for reconciliation. As for the other disciples, they were all legacy disciples of the great sections. Although they were not the only ones, the death of one was still a great loss. Su Qin killing these people was equivalent to standing on the opposite side of the great sects overseas. Under such circumstances, no matter how confident Wan Qing was in Su Qin, he was still terrified. No matter how strong Su Qin was, he was only one person. How could he defeat all the great sects overseas? It's fine. Su Qin waved his hand and said nonchalantly. According to what Yan Hai said just now, the leaders of the great sects were only legends of the 5th or 6th heaven. Su Qin could kill any number of such martial artists with a slap. As for the ancestors in slumber in their respective sects, there might be a few of them who had stepped into the 7th or 8th heaven. However, their qi and blood must have deteriorated and their strength was greatly reduced. If they encountered Su Qin, they would be killed easily. In Wan Qing's eyes, the great sects were as high as the sky, but to Su Qin, they were nothing more than something he could easily sweep away. By the way, the great sects don't know about the death of these disciples, right? Wan Qing looked at Yan Hai expectantly as if he had seen some hope. Yan Hai hesitated for a while and said honestly, the disciples of the great sects will turn a trace of divine thought into life fire and enshrine it in the depths of the sect. Once they die in the outside world, the life fire will be extinguished. I'm afraid that the news of the death of Goddess Bing Ling and the others has already spread to their respective sects. Wan Qing's hands and feet turned cold when she heard this. That's enough. Su Qin interrupted the conversation between Wan Qing and Yan Hai. He looked at Yan Hai and said bluntly, I'll give you two choices. Surrender or die. Yan Hai was silent when he heard this. Although his position in the Daoism sect was not the highest, it was not low either. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was the pride of the heavens. But now, between his dignity and his own life, Yan Hai was in a dilemma. Sir, I choose to surrender. Finally, Yan Hai sighed and bowed. Not everyone had the courage to face death, especially legends. They were high up and enjoyed everything in the world. How could they bear to die? Don't resist. Su Qin's mind moved and a trace of divine thought was separated and planted into Yan Hai's body. Greetings, Master. Yan Hai composed himself and bowed to Su Qin. Compared to Wan Qing, Yan Hai was more aware that the trace of divine thought that Su Qin planted in his body was directly connected to his mind. If he dared to have any other thoughts, this trace of divine thought would definitely explode and perish together with Yan Hai. You may leave. Su Qin waved his hand and said, Yes. Yanhai and Ruanqing looked at each other, bowed, and retreated. After the two had completely left, Su Qin raised his head slightly and looked toward the sea. His eyes were calm and distant. The great sects of the sea. Just as Su Qin killed a few disciples of the great sects overseas, Su Qin's eyes lit up. In the depths of the sea, in a towering and huge palace made of ice crystals, the Snow God Palace Lord and several elders were sitting cross-legged and talking to each other. We must be careful about the matter of the great battle. This concerns the legacy of the Snow God Palace for 10,000 years. The Snow God Palace Lord's voice was crisp and clear, but it was as cold as an iceberg. Yes, Palace Lord. The elders looked solemn and said solemnly. Although they were not as strong as the Snow God Palace Lord, they could faintly feel that the recovery of the vitality tide in the sea was slowing down. Not only that, but the heaven and earth essence chi and endless spiritual vigor were also flowing away. This was simply unheard of. Therefore, when this matter first appeared, the sect masters of the many great sects of the sea gathered together to discuss it. In the end, they came to a conclusion. The prophecy of Tianjizi of the Tianji sect should be true. The rumored land of great struggle really did exist. Don't worry, Palace Lord. Bing Ling has already gone to the great battle. With her help. An elder was about to speak. Suddenly, at this moment, a disciple of the Snow God Palace hurriedly ran in. Palace Lord, elders, bad news, bad news. This disciple's face was full of panic and even a trace of fear. What happened? The Snow God Palace Lord frowned and looked at this disciple. Palace Lord, Her Highness Goddess's vital fire, her vital fire has been extinguished. This disciple of the Snow God Palace said in a trembling voice. The moment these words came out, the Snow God Palace Lord's expression froze. Then, with the Snow God Palace Lord as the center, the temperature of the entire palace made of ice crystals dropped rapidly. Chapter 200. At this moment, all the disciples of the Snow God Palace in the Ice Crystal Palace felt a bone-chilling coldness. Oh no! What's going on? Palace Master, the Palace Master is angry. The disciples of the Snow God Palace turned pale with fright. They hastily knelt down, not daring to raise their heads. In their eyes, the Snow God Palace Master was like a god. She was high and mighty, and she dictated the life and death of all the disciples. If the Snow God Palace Master was angry, it would be as if the sky was falling for these disciples. Why is the Palace Master angry? Nothing has happened to our Snow God Palace in the past few decades. Some of the disciples were puzzled. Could it be related to Her Highness, the goddess? One of the disciples' expression changed. Some time ago, Her Highness, the goddess, was ordered by the Palace Master to go to the place where Tianjizi had predicted the great battle. However, not long after, the Snow God Palace Master was angry. Many disciples could not help but guess if there was a connection. Just as the disciples of the Snow God Palace were guessing and feeling uneasy, the depths of the Ice Crystal Palace seemed to have turned into a world of ice and snow. The power of ice rose like an ocean. Palace Master, please spare my life. The disciple of the Snow God Palace who came in to report that the goddess life flame had been extinguished felt his body stiffen. The circulation of his blood and inner force slowed down. Even his consciousness started to blur. Although the cultivation methods cultivated by the disciples of the Snow God Palace were of the cold attribute, it did not mean that they could ignore the cold. Palace Master, the Palace Master's strength has improved again. The elders beside her were able to hold on. At this moment, they exchanged glances with one another, and a trace of shock appeared on their faces. For the Snow God Palace Master to cause such an impact with just her aura, even if she had not reached the legendary height of the seventh heaven, she was probably not far from it. The Snow God Palace Master glanced at the disciple. She retracted her aura and said coldly, "Bring me Linger's life flame." The Snow God Palace disciple shuddered and quickly retreated. Soon, she returned with a candlestick that looked like an ice crystal. It's extinguished. The master of the Snow God Palace glanced over in silence. The extinguishment of the life fire meant that the owner of the life fire had completely died. Even his divine telekinesis could not escape. Who is it? Who is it? The Snow God Palace Master was expressionless, but his words were filled with killing intent. Goddess Bingling was a disciple that she had personally chosen to nurture as the next Snow God Palace Master. It could be said that the Master of the Snow God Palace had spent a lot of effort on Bingling. But now Bingling was dead? Palace Lord. At this moment, an elder at the side braced himself and said, "Her Highness the Goddess has already reached the peak of the third heavenly layer. Coupled with the various secret techniques of our Snow God Palace, even if she encounters an ordinary fourth heavenly layer legend, she will have no problem escaping if she can't defeat them." That's right, Palace Lord. To be able to kill Her Highness the Goddess, his strength is at least at the level of the sect leader. Another elder opened his mouth to analyze. Sect Master? The Master of the Snow God Palace narrowed her eyes, which glowed faintly. Ling has a life-saving item that the ancestor gave her. Once it's activated, even a seventh heavenly layer legend might not be able to stop her. As soon as the Master of the Snow God Palace finished speaking, the pupils of the elders suddenly shrank. Seventh heavenly layer? Could it be that the ancestor of some large sect has shamelessly awakened and attacked Her Highness? Impossible. Do you know how much those old farts cherish their lives? It's impossible for them to use up their remaining Shuyuan to attack Her Highness. Then tell me, what's the situation now? The elders immediately began to argue. At this moment, the elder who had been silent all this while said, "Perhaps Her Highness the Goddess didn't have time to use her life-saving item?" As soon as he said this, the elders looked at each other, feeling that this was very likely. Didn't use it? The Master of the Snow God Palace's eyes flashed. In fact, she also thought that this was the most likely possibility. A seventh heavenly layer legend was extremely rare. Even if they wanted to attack, they would attack the sect master of a large sect like her. As for Goddess Bingling, to some extent, Bingling was not worthy of a seventh heavenly layer legend attacking her. However, to be able to make Ling unable to use her life-saving item, the Master of the Snow God Palace pondered. Palace Master. The elder who spoke last seemed to have thought of something and said carefully, "There are also disciples of other large sects who went to the battlefield with Her Highness the Goddess. Something happened to Her Highness the Goddess. They definitely know better than us. Instead of guessing who did it, why don't we go directly to those large sects and ask them?" "I understand." The Master of the Snow God Palace's eyes lit up. She took a step forward and disappeared. Just as the large sects overseas were in an uproar, Su Qin was strolling leisurely in the palace. Since he had come out of seclusion, Su Qin did not intend to go back immediately. Vitality tide, Su Qin raised his right hand and made a grabbing motion toward the depths of the void. Suddenly, Su Qin caught a ball of misty gas in his palm. This ball of misty gas was formless and intangible. It constantly circulated and changed, trying to escape from Su Qin's palm. If there were legends at the level of a large sect overseas who saw this scene, they would be shocked to discover that the ball of misty gas in Su Qin's hand was Heaven and Earth Spirit Opportunity. Heaven and Earth Spirit Opportunity was different from Heaven and Earth Essence Qi. Compared to Essence Qi, Spirit Opportunity was more illusory. It was more like a special substance that was scattered between heaven and earth. Even a seventh heavenly layer legend would find it difficult to capture a trace of it. But now, Su Qin was actually playing with a large ball of spirit essence in his hand, which was simply shocking. What a pity! There's only this much spirit opportunity in a radius of dozens of miles. Su Qin took a light breath. This ball of spirit opportunity flowed into his mouth and nose like fish. Just as Su Qin was strolling leisurely in the palace, everything that happened in Chang and city began to spread quickly to the world. Even if the Emperor of Tang ordered that it was not allowed to be spread, the battle was too shocking. 5 legends fell in a row in front of everyone. Even if the Emperor of Tang wanted to suppress it, it was impossible. He couldn't completely block Chang and city, right? As the news continued to spread, The whole world was shocked again. 6 legends came to Chang and City to suppress the empire of Tang, but the legend of Chang and City only slashed a few times and these legends fell one after another? Countless people were dumbfounded. This had exceeded the limit of their imagination. What kind of existence was a legend? Not even one would appear in an era. But now, not only had 6 of them suddenly appeared, they had also been killed so quickly? This was simply unbelievable. Is it true? The last time the imperial teacher fell in the hands of the legend of Chang and City, it could be explained by the fact that he had just broken through and his realm was unstable. But now there are 6 legends. How can the legend of Chang and City kill them? Some martial artists questioned. You still don't believe it? At that time, I was outside Chang and City. The aura of the 6 legends enveloped the entire palace. I felt like I was in heaven. Then the legend in the palace came out. In less than a few moments, 5 of the 6 legends fell. A martial artist patted his chest and said, swearing that he saw it with his own eyes. 5 fell, a total of 6. Doesn't that mean that one of them escaped? Someone keenly grasped this point and asked. That surviving martial arts legend was intentionally left alive by the Lord Legend in the palace. He should be useful for something. When the martial artist said this, he paused for a while and lowered his voice. There's one more thing. Among the 6 legends who came to Chang and City, one of them should be the founder of the Blood Kill Gate. As soon as this was said, suddenly it caused another uproar. The founder of the Blood Kill Gate was a legend from 200 years ago. Whether it was strength or means, he was far from being comparable to the imperial teacher. Even such a powerhouse in the legend realm had no ability to resist in front of the legend in the palace. Wasn't this too incredible? How strong is the legend in the imperial palace of the Empire of Tang? Finally, a martial artist couldn't help but ask. Whether it was the imperial teacher or the 6 legends, they seemed to be as fragile as babies in front of the legend in the imperial palace. In this case, naturally, some martial artists were curious about Su Qin's strength. How strong is he? The martial artist who personally experienced the battle in Chang and City was silent for a while and said seriously. Only the fallen legends know how terrifying this is. Maybe these legends don't know. The martial artist added in his heart. Su Qin naturally didn't know that at this moment, countless creatures in the world were shocked by him killing several legends. The ancient tree in the Demon Cloud City can no longer sign in. Su Qin sighed lightly, walked out of the underground hall, and came to the imperial palace. In the cave world, the ancient tree in the Demon Cloud City is known as a branch of the ancient demon tree that supports the heavens and earth. Originally, Su Qin thought that this branch could support his sign-in for a few decades. As a result, it didn't even last for 2 years, and its Dao accumulation was exhausted. However, in the past 2 years, I did get a lot of good things from that ancient tree. Su Qin touched his chin with a satisfied expression. In addition to thousands of demon origin fruits, he also got demon energy crystals, heavenly demon liquid, demon god's blood, and many other treasures. Several of them were not inferior to the demon god's blade. After all, it's just a branch of the real ancient demon tree. I'm afraid it's not even 1/1,000,000th of the real ancient demon tree. It's already very good to get so many things. Su Qin nodded slightly and comforted himself. I don't know what treasures I can get by signing in front of the real ancient demon tree. Su Qin was fascinated. However, Su Qin also knew that it was impossible for him to go to the depths of the cave world in a short time. Since I can't sign in the cave world, let's just make do here. Su Qin stopped and looked at the white jade square in front of him. System, sign in. Su Qin thought for a while and said in his heart, congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the magical ability, call wind and summon rain. A cold, mechanical voice sounded in Su Qin's ears. Magical ability? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. Chapter 201. Imperial Palace. In front of the white jade square. Su Qin was overjoyed. After signing in for decades, he had only obtained 2 kinds of divine powers. The first was the Eye of Truth, and the second was Flesh Rebirth. Both of these divine powers have brought great help to Su Qin. The former allowed Su Qin to easily see through all things, while the latter helped Su Qin condense an incarnation to explore the cave world. Especially the latter, in the past few years, Su Qin, through his incarnation, has harvested a lot of wool from the cave world. Even a branch of the ancient demon tree in the Demon Cloud City, which was claimed to come from the depths of the world, was harvested by Su Qin. Of course, the harvest was also very gratifying. And now, Su Qin has finally signed in and obtained the third divine power. Thinking of this, Su Qin turned and returned to the underground majestic hall. However, the divine ability this time sounds a little weak. Su Qin sat cross-legged, thinking silently in his heart. The magical power he got from signing in at the White Feather Square was called Call the Wind and Summon the Rain. For ordinary people, and even in the eyes of martial artists of the 9th level, he was definitely like an immortal. If he wasn't an immortal, then what was? But once you reach the level of legend, the so-called Call the Wind and Summon the Rain is a joke. For example, Su Qin can bathe in thunder through the 5 Thunder God Fist. Although other legends can't do what Su Qin can do, it's impossible for them to be afraid of a mere Call the Wind and Summon the Rain. The joy on Su Qin's face gradually converged, and he began to ponder the new divine ability, Call the Wind and Summon the Rain, in his mind. After a long time, Su Qin suddenly opened his eyes. This divine ability is not simple. Su Qin's eyes lit up. He was obviously in disbelief. The divine ability, Call the Wind and Summon the Rain, to be precise, is composed of 2 small divine abilities. One is the Call the Wind technique, and the other is the Summon the Rain technique. And when Su Qin was comprehending the divine ability, Call the Wind and Summon the Rain, he discovered that the Call the Wind technique in this divine ability was not ordinary wind, but the 9 Heavens astral wind. What is the 9 Heavens astral wind? It was a terrifying storm in the boundless sky that separated the world from the void. Su Qin had once ascended infinitely in order to grasp the changes in the recovery of the vitality tide, overlooking the continent from the 9 Heavens astral wind. At that time, Su Qin already knew how terrifying the 9 Heavens astral winds were. With Su Qin's strength at that time, he could certainly traverse the 9 Heavens astral wind, but he would also be injured. Not to mention that Su Qin had only seen the shallow 9 Heavens astral wind. The higher he went, the more terrifying the 9 Heavens astral wind was. In fact, the 9 Heavens astral wind at the highest point could even disperse the crowd. The terrifying effects of the flame of life. Legends ran amok in the world without fear. Even an avalanche could not threaten a legend. But the 9 Heavens astral wind was different. High-level legends were still okay. They could rely on their strong true essence and physical body to block it. But if a first or second heavenly layer legend was blown by the 9 Heavens astral wind, even if they didn't die on the spot, it would be extremely troublesome. It could be said that the Summon the Wind divine ability was a legend-level killing weapon. Even if Su Qin could summon the highest level of the 9 Heavens astral wind, it would be enough to sweep away the myth realm and even threaten the Earth immortals. Of course, if he wanted to summon the highest level of the 9 Heavens astral wind, Su Qin would need to at least step into the level of Great Arhat. No matter what kind of divine ability it was, whether it was the Eye of Truth or the Flesh Rebirth, they would all increase with the increase of the user's strength. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin looked satisfied. Just now, he thought that the Summon the Wind divine ability was only summoning ordinary wind, but he didn't expect it to be the 9 Heavens astral wind. Summon the Rain. Su Qin's thoughts turned and he fell into deep thought. If Su Qin could understand the Summon the Wind divine ability, then Su Qin was a little confused about the Summon the Rain divine ability. According to the divine ability, the Summon the Rain divine ability summons the murderous intent of heaven and earth, condensing the murderous intent into raindrops and destroying everything. Su Qin's face was thoughtful. The next moment, Su Qin said softly, "Summon the rain." Buzz! In front of Su Qin, the void suddenly condensed, and a crystal-like raindrop emerged. This raindrop was like blood, red, exuding a piercing murderous intent. This raindrop is enough to kill a grade 1 great perfection and threaten a legend. Su Qin stared at the raindrop suspended in front of him and judged in his heart. Kill a grade 1 great perfection and threaten a legend. It may sound like nothing for an existence like Su Qin, but it must be known that the real summon the rain divine ability summons more than just this raindrop. Instead, it was endless raindrops that filled the sky like a real rainstorm. Under the rain summoning technique, even a high-level mythic would find it difficult to move forward, as if they were stuck in a quagmire. Not bad. Su Qin nodded slightly, and with a thought, the raindrop full of murderous intent dissipated. Finally, I have a true offensive abhijna, Su Qin sighed in his heart. Whether it is the true I, or flesh rebirth, they are all auxiliary divine abilities and belong to the passive category. However, the summoning wind and summoning rain technique was a completely offensive divine ability. At least Su Qin has one more means that he can use actively. Now that the body has completed the 5th transformation, the miniature domain has also been condensed. The next energy is mainly focused on improving the cultivation realm, striving to step into the 8th or 9th heavenly layer as soon as possible and break through the bottleneck of the Great Arhat. Su Qin made a decision in his heart. The next moment, in front of Su Qin, a large number of divine elixirs, spirit fruits and ancient medicines were all placed in piles. These are some of the treasures that Su Qin has obtained over the years. Su Qin classified all the treasures and took out the treasures that are beneficial to his current cultivation and placed them in front of him. As for the low-level pills such as the small revitalizing pill that Su Qin obtained in the early days of signing in, they were taken out by Su Qin and placed in the East Palace for the family Su to use for cultivation. Anyway, the small revitalizing pill is only useful for martial artists in the lower and middle realm. As for the upper realm, it basically loses the effect of improving strength, not to mention a 7th heavenly layer legend like Su Qin. Su Qin casually swallowed a mouthful of world's essence qi and it was countless times stronger than the small revitalizing pill. Instead of putting it in the system space to collect dust, it would be better to use it to improve the strength of the family Su. There are a total of 9,892 devil origin fruits and 8,350 vermilion fruits here, Su Qin calculated in his heart. Although the world's essence qi has recovered and the environment of heaven and earth has changed in the direction of easier cultivation, it doesn't mean that pills and spirit fruits have lost their effect. On the contrary, as the world's essence qi recovery intensifies, the effect of these pills and spirit fruits will only increase. These divine elixirs and spirit fruits are enough to push me to the 9th heavenly layer realm, but the shackles of entering the Great Arhat realm are not something that can be helped by external forces. At present, I only know that if I want to enter the Great Arhat realm, I must condense the miniature domain. As for other things, I know nothing. Su Qin's eyes were faint. The Great Arhat realm is too rare. If a martial arts legend can be born in a few generations, then Great Arhat realm or Earth Immortal realm is unheard of at all. Even overseas, where martial arts have flourished for countless years, Earth Immortals are legends and have not appeared in front of the world for thousands of years. Forget it. There's no need to think so much. If worst comes to worst, after I enter the 9th heavenly layer, I will personally go overseas and ask the sect masters. Su Qin shook his head slightly and stopped thinking about it. According to his current knowledge, the peak combat power overseas today is the old ancestors who are sleeping in their respective sects. These old ancestors' qi and blood are declining, and they can only rely on sleeping to survive. Although they have the 7th or 8th heavenly layer realm, their strength will inevitably be greatly reduced. If Su Qin encounters them, he can just suppress them casually. Besides, if Su Qin really enters the 9th heavenly layer Arhat realm, with all kinds of magical powers, let alone these old ancestors, even if he really faces an Earth Immortal, there is still hope that he can escape if he can't defeat them. However, among the many treasures I signed in the cave world, the most precious is not the nearly 10,000 demon origin fruits, nor is it the demon god's blade, but this, Su Qin's eyes narrowed, and he saw a drop of blood suddenly appear in front of him. Although this drop of blood was quietly suspended in front of him, Su Qin's divine sense and domain completely lost their effect. It was as if this drop of blood didn't exist at all. I can only see it with the naked eye, but my divine sense and domain are useless. Is this the demon god's blood? Su Qin exclaimed in his heart. If the heaven and earth great array can block the divine sense, then under the cover of the domain, any heaven and earth great array can be seen with the flip of a hand. Since Su Qin condensed the domain, he has never seen a treasure that can avoid the detection of the domain. But the demon god's blood is an exception. No matter how Su Qin enveloped it with the domain, he couldn't feel the demon god's blood at all. Demon god, what level of existence is it? Su Qin looked carefully at the drop of demon god's blood in front of him. This drop of demon god's blood didn't emit any aura, but it seemed to be independent of this space and could only be seen with the naked eye. Originally, I thought that the demon god of the cave world was at most stronger than the earth immortals, but now it seems that the demon god is far above the earth immortals. Su Qin thought silently in his heart. Su Qin is now in the 7th heavenly layer, and he can roughly estimate the height of the earth immortals after condensing the domain. But the demon god, Su Qin didn't know before, but now that he saw this drop of demon god's blood, he realized that the demon god was definitely an incredible creature. Over the years, I've only received 7 or 8 drops of demon god's blood. Su Qin kept the drop of demon god's blood in front of him into the system space, thinking in his heart. The demon god's blood is of no use to me for the time being, at least until I enter the great Arhat realm. For now, it's better to cultivate. Su Qin slowly closed his eyes, and every once in a while he would consume a demon origin fruit or dozens of vermilion fruits, constantly improving his realm. At this moment, just as Su Qin was cultivating in seclusion, on an island in the overseas martial arts world, the palace master of the Snow God Palace, the Kuragenkyo sect master, the Daoism sect master, and the other leaders of the overseas sects gathered together. Chapter 202. On a certain island overseas, several figures stood in different places. These figures had different auras. Some were as cold as an iceberg, some were as deep as the darkness, and some were as sharp as divine swords. They stood there quietly, giving people the illusion that they were facing heaven and earth. After a long time, a Lao Dao cultivator wearing a Taoist robe and a wine gourd on his waist hurried over. The Snow God Palace master frowned and said, "Sect master, you're late. We encountered a rare sea beast on the way." The Lao Dao was delighted and stayed for a while to subdue it. "We're preparing to brew wine. Please don't take offense." The Lao Dao cultivator patted the wine gourd on his waist and said with a smile, "Umph." The Snow God Palace master snorted and didn't pursue the matter. At their level, they could look down on the entire overseas. Their strength was similar, and neither could do anything to the other. Not to mention that the Lao Dao cultivator was late. Even if the Lao Dao cultivator didn't come, the others couldn't do anything. "That's enough. Snow God Palace Master, why didn't you call all of us here to talk?" A man with an aura as deep as the abyss spoke in a hoarse voice. He was the Kuragenkyo sect master. If one were to ask who had the biggest reputation here, it would undoubtedly be the Kuragenkyo sect master. This wasn't because the Kuragenkyo sect master was powerful, but because he had killed the most people. Whether it was the Snow God Palace master or the other sect masters, although they were lofty and looked down on all living beings as ants, they wouldn't really kill without restraint. However, the Kuragenkyo sect master was different. He had once killed millions of people because he failed to break through, and there was no lack of legends among them. However, the Kuragenkyo sect master was smart. He only killed ordinary living beings and legends. He didn't cross the line of the other great sections. It's simple. The Snow God Palace master was silent for a while, then said, "The goddess of my Snow God Palace is dead. Before she died, she went to the battlefield with the disciples of your sections." After the Snow God Palace master finished speaking, he stared at the others. "Palace master, it's not just the goddess of your Snow God Palace who died. The life fire of my disciple was extinguished as well. The man with a long sword on his back shook his head. My Kuragenkyo disciple is also dead, the Kuragenkyo sect master said in a low voice. So, one after another, the sect masters spoke up. A moment later, the palace master of Snow God's palace and the others looked at each other, frowning. It was because the disciples they sent to the land of great battles had all died. This was simply inconceivable. Right? The 10,000 Swords sect leader turned his gaze towards the old Taoist who was fiddling with the wine gourd on his waist. The other sect masters also looked at the old Taoist when they heard this. The Lao Dao master looked embarrassed. He hesitated for a moment and said truthfully, Yen Hai is not dead. If Yen Hai died, the life fire in the Dao Yi sect would be extinguished. As the sect master, he would be the first to know. Unfortunately, until the Lao Dao master left the Dao Yi sect, Yen Hai's life fire was still burning slowly and showed no signs of extinguishing. As soon as the Lao Dao master finished speaking, Zhang Jiao's expression changed. The way they looked at the Lao Dao master suddenly became subtle. Many disciples went to the battlefield together. Except for the Dao Yi sect's disciples, all the other disciples died. It was strange no matter how they looked at it. You don't think it was Yen Hai who killed your disciples, do you? The Lao Dao master shook his head. I know Yen Hai's strength. Even if he was 10 times stronger, he wouldn't be able to do this. As soon as these words came out, the sect masters quickly realized what was going on. Indeed, the disciples they sent to the battlefield this time were all the elites of their sections. They were at least disciples of inheritance. The Snow God's palace, in particular, sent their own goddess. Could it be that a sect master-level martial artist secretly made a move? The Kuragenkyo sect master's tone revealed a trace of killing intent. There were many overseas mythical realm martial artists. Only those who had reached the 5th heavenly layer were qualified to be called sect master-level martial artists. In fact, most of the sect masters of the major sects were at this level. It shouldn't be. The Lao Dao master of the Dao Yi sect said. I probably know where all the overseas sect master-level martial artists are. No one has gone to the battlefield during this time. Perhaps a sect master-level martial artist has been born in the battlefield. The Wanjian school master guessed. Impossible. The Snow God Palace master was the first to speak. The battlefield has only appeared in the past few years. How could a 5th heavenly layer be born so quickly? Before the recovery of the vitality tide, the battlefield was just a barren continent. There were only a few mythical realm martial artists. Even if the vitality tide recovered, it still took decades or hundreds of years to settle down before there was a chance of a 5th heavenly layer martial artist being born. Even if it's not the 5th heavenly layer, I'm afraid it's not too far away. The Kuragenkyo sect master whispered. Well, what should we do now? The Kuragenkyo sect master's eyes flickered. He looked at the other sect masters and said, I will send Mingyu of the Kuragenkyo to the battlefield personally to investigate this matter. Mingyu? The sect masters heard this and looked at each other. In the overseas martial arts world, sect master-level martial artists were high and mighty. But below the sect master level, there were still a few amazing mythical realm martial artists. And Mingyu of the Kuragenkyo was one of them. Mingyu was known as one of the mythical realm martial artists closest to the sect master level. Even if the several sect masters present wanted to defeat Mingyu, it would take a lot of effort. The fundamental cultivation technique of the Black Origin sect, the illusory demonic body, allowed one to freely switch between reality and illusion. Mingyu had even cultivated the illusory demonic body to the point where it was close to the great accomplishment stage. Ordinary legends simply couldn't touch Mingyu, let alone defeat him. We will also send a mythical realm martial artist to go to the battlefield with you, Mingyu of the Kuragenkyo. The sect masters thought for a while and said, I'd like to see who dares to make a move against my disciples. The Kuragenkyo sect master's eyes flashed with a faint light. A smile appeared on the faces of the Snow God Palace master and the others. In the overseas martial arts world, The major sects were the absolute rulers. Now that several sect masters had joined forces, not to mention the battlefield that had just begun to recover, even if the overseas martial arts world was included, how many people could stop them? Cave world. The sky was dark. The Cathode City Lord and more than a dozen demon kings quickly rushed towards the demon cloud city. City Lord. At this time, a demon king couldn't help but say, "Are we really going to deal with the high-level demon king in the demon cloud city?" The Cathode City Lord stopped, turned around, and glanced at the other party. "You don't believe in my strength?" "Of course not." The demon king's face turned pale. "It's just that there are countless great arrays in the demon cloud city. Even if the city lord is powerful, if the other party always hides in the city and presides over the great arrays in the city, wouldn't we be helpless?" As soon as these words came out, the other dozen demon kings nodded secretly. Although the Cathode City Lord had stepped into the high-level demon king realm hundreds of years ago, even among high-level demon kings, he was definitely a powerhouse. But the one in the demon cloud city was also a high-level demon king. Even if there was a gap between the two, it wouldn't be as big as a moat. If the other party sincerely stayed in the demon cloud city and didn't come out, what could the Cathode City Lord do? The layers of great arrays in the demon cloud city were arranged by the previous demon cloud city lords. If there were only these great arrays, they wouldn't be able to stop the Cathode City Lord. But if there was a high-level demon king in the great arrays, it would be different. With a high-level demon king personally presiding over these great arrays, the power of these great arrays would skyrocket by more than 10 times. At that time, it would be difficult for the Cathode City Lord to break through the great arrays of the demon cloud city. Are you worried about this? The Cathode City Lord shook his head slightly, hesitated for a while, and said, "It's not impossible to tell you." When the Cathode City Lord said this, he raised his right hand, and a dark bracelet appeared on his wrist. This bracelet was small and exquisite, but it faintly exuded an inexplicable and profound aura. "This is..." The demon kings looked at each other, and a trace of horror appeared on their faces. Even if they looked at the small and exquisite dark bracelet on the wrist of the silver-armored city lord from a distance, they felt as if their minds were being sucked into it. "City Lord, what is this?" The demon king who had just spoken asked in a trembling voice. "This is the war machine of my demon race." The Cathode City Lord's voice was low, revealing a trace of awe. "War machine?" The demon kings looked at each other with shock in their eyes. "Yes." The Cathode City Lord nodded slightly. 200 years ago, when I entered the high-level demon king realm, I went to the depths of the world to worship several demon gods. And this war bracelet was given to me by one of the demon gods." The Cathode City Lord's tone seemed to be immersed in some kind of memory, and slowly said, "In ancient times, the human world experienced several recoveries of vitality. It was a great era, and powerhouses came out in large numbers, suppressing the world. But even so, my demon race was still able to set off wars and constantly invade the human world. Do you know what we relied on?" The Cathode City Lord looked at the demon kings. Could it be? The demon kings subconsciously looked at the dark bracelet on the Cathode City Lord's wrist. "Yes." The Cathode City Lord nodded slightly and said, "It was this kind of war machine." The Cathode City Lord raised his hand again and showed the dark bracelet. "Don't look at this small, but inside the bracelet, there are tens of millions of demon race puppets." Tens of millions of demon race puppets? The pupils of the more than a dozen demon kings shrank suddenly, and they looked at the small dark bracelet on the Cathode City Lord's wrist in disbelief. "In fact, my war bracelet can only be regarded as a defective product. The real war machine has at least hundreds of millions of demon race puppets." The Cathode City Lord sighed. In addition, the demon race puppets in the bracelet were innately engraved with an ancient demon array. This ancient demon array can connect tens of millions of troops as a whole, and any attack received will be distributed to the army. As soon as the Cathode City Lord said this, the more than a dozen demon kings swallowed their saliva in disbelief. If it was only an army of tens of millions, with the demon king's ability to control the power of heaven and earth, it would only be a little troublesome at most. After all, a casual blow from a demon king, under the blessing of the power of heaven and earth, can at least sweep away tens of thousands of troops. How long can an army of tens of millions last in front of a demon king? However, the appearance of the ancient demon array cut off the ability of a demon king-level powerhouse to fight against millions. Under the shroud of the ancient demon array, the army of tens of millions is like a whole. Even if a demon king's attack is earth-shattering, if it is divided into tens of millions, how many can it kill? 100? 200? Therefore, this ancient demon array is a killing weapon that completely restrains the existence of demon kings. With the ancient demon array, even a demon king can hardly shake an army of tens of millions. Countless years ago, when the demon race invaded the human world, they relied on an endless army of demon race puppets to force the supreme powerhouses of the human world to retreat. When I get outside the demon cloud city, I will release the demon race puppet army. At that time, even if the great array is fully opened, what can the trivial demon cloud city use to resist? The Cathode City Lord was full of confidence. The City Lord is invincible. The more than a dozen demon kings were convinced and bowed in worship. Demon Cloud City. Deep in the City Lord's hall, under the ancient tree, Su Qin sat cross-legged, slowly opened the eyes of truth, and looked at the entire Demon Cloud City. He saw countless wisps of aura, far or near, strong or weak, as if they were endless. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.